Really excited to be joined by Glenn Kinley, joining us from Champaign, Illinois. First of all, Glenn, welcome to the show, Southeast Sports Plus today. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys having me on. So I think it was my first appearance on the show, so
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. Maybe it won't be my last if Illinois. I guess Illinois plays Mizzou in basketball in a couple of weeks. So you guys,
yeah,
or
that's
that's
true.
that's
less than
right.
that now. It's that's coming up on Monday. But yeah, we get these. I guess you can call them Big Ten SEC crossover episodes here and there, right?
hmm Yeah, and some really interesting ones as it relates to Illinois because they cross with Tennessee in multiple sports in a really
Yeah.
short window of time. Let's first of all start off with football here in the Music City Bowl because it is a trip to Nashville, so it's a trip on Tennessee's home turf, so to speak. What are some of the ways that the Illinois Fighting Illini are gearing up for this matchup as they go to Tennessee in a quote-unquote neutral site game?
Yeah, Illinois is kind of an older team. They brought back, I think it was 16 or 18. I believe it was 18 starters from their bowl game last year. They beat South Carolina in that bowl game last year and brought just about everybody back. They lost one really, really good wide receiver who's now with the Denver Broncos, and that was their biggest loss. But they brought a ton of guys back, and I think most of those guys are going to play in this bowl game. Not all of them. They have had two significant opt-outs for the NFL draft. That would be Gabe Akis. He's an edge rusher or an outside linebacker who leads the Big Ten in sacks. And then they had an offensive lineman, one of their best offensive linemen, one of their tackles opt out for the draft as well. So those two spots will be the two they have to fill, but they got a lot of guys back from last year, a lot of guys who have played a lot of football, and a lot of guys who kind of, I think, have been a big part of this turnaround of Illinois football to where there was fans this year at Illinois that were kind of bummed they weren't in the playoff. It used to be like, oh my gosh, you won 6 wins. Way to go, guys, you know? So these guys have been a big part in taking Illinois football from a place where 6 wins used to be, let's give them all a medal of honor, and now they won, 8, and people were a little bit upset about it. So this is a senior class that's historic, and I think kind of wants to go out on a high note just because they've done a lot for Illinois football.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this turnaround for Illinois football really started in what is now referred to as the longest game in college football history, going back to Penn State. I was in attendance, so I can say that.
Wow.
It was cold, it was rainy, and it was just nothing but football weather. But when you look at this year's team, it's hard to look past quarterback Luke Altmaier, and we've been able to follow Tennessee throughout this entire year. The defense hasn't been great. What do you expect to see from him in this bowl game?
Yeah, Illinois, probably a similar spot. You could say the defense hasn't been great, but the offense has been pretty good. Not always perfect, but pretty good. Altmaier came back for his third year at Illinois. This matchup is unique because actually Luke, I told Tennessee, he keeps having these crossover episodes with Tennessee. It was actually when Illinois played Tennessee in basketball last year that Luke, during that game, announced on the court, on the microphone at the basketball game, I'm coming back for one more year. And then later that offseason, Luke had to kind of make a second, hey, I'm actually still coming back announcement because there were so many heavy rumors that actually Tennessee was recruiting him and trying to get him in the transfer portal. And when he finally kind of shut the door on that possibility, he made another I'm coming back announcement, and now he's playing Tennessee in the bowl game. So just very interesting. He's got plenty of interaction with Vol fans, I guess you could say at this point, but he's been consistent. Luke came to Illinois from Ole Miss, so he has some SEC experience. He's from Starkville, Mississippi, so he grew up in SEC country. He got to Illinois, and his first year in 23 was just okay. Illinois missed a bowl game that year, and it wasn't great. And then 24 was kind of a prove it year of like, okay, what can this guy do for us? Is he the guy? And he was terrific last year, and he's really built off that this year. I would tell you, too, looking at some of Luke's numbers, a few of his picks, I'm always on the sideline filming the games, and a few of his picks as we pull them up, if he's got 5 interceptions, I would say at least 2 of those, he won't say it, but I'll say it with him. That might have been, maybe could have been caught by his receiver. But he's been really solid. Probably more of a dual threat than maybe some people realize. He's not a guy that's going to, have 28 carries in a game and run for 200 yards on you. But he can take off and run when he needs it. Actually, we've seen Illinois do a little bit more of that down the stretch this season than maybe they did even in the first part of conference play.
Right. They won 2 of their last 3 games to close out the year. However, the offense did not seem to hum as much as it did earlier
Right.
in the season. I think I read where Allmeyer had a 16 QBR against Northwestern, which Northwestern traditionally has a really strong defense there. So what are some of the ways that you think that this team will try to make a pivot to maybe springboard and use this last game of the season in the bowl game for 2026?
The only thing I'll note about that Northwestern game is I think there was about 8 inches of snow on the ground.
That's
so they
true,
weren't throwing
yeah.
the football. They weren't throwing the football too much for that one. But you're right. Actually, there was games, I think, when Illinois beat USC. Like, that was a really big win, and the offense looked terrific. And I think that maybe was Luke Altmaier's career high in passing yards. And so they've been good. They've been a little bit inconsistent. And honestly, you can't put it all in one spot, but I think maybe some of the inconsistency has come from the offensive line. I mean, this team beat USC, and then lost to Wisconsin. How does that happen? And it was just kind of Wisconsin had a really good defensive line that kind of took it to Illinois. And I tell people, too, people say, how did this team lose to Wisconsin? How did Wisconsin steal a win against Illinois? I don't think Wisconsin stole it. I was at that game. Wisconsin beat them, and that was an ugly loss for Illinois. That was Illinois' O-line not playing well enough, and Illinois' defense certainly not playing well enough against a Wisconsin offense that had been terrible all year. But I think for this group, they have a number of receivers that they'll throw to. Colin Dixon and Hank Beatty would be the 2 biggest names, but I think the more they can get more guys involved there. And then they got 3 running backs that they'll use. And it's been an interesting dynamic to say, who's it going to be this time? There have been all 3 guys probably throughout the season. There's been a time where I said, I wonder if that guy's not very happy. He's not getting enough carries. And the next week he'll have 18 carries for 212 yards or something. And so they got 3 running backs to prepare for. I think that can make things tricky. But you guys mentioned it. It all starts and it all ends with Luke Altmaier.
AJ Brown, take notes.
Yeah, I know. We always like to hear from the veteran coaches about the big picture topics in college football, opt-outs being one. Here's head coach Brent Bielema.
Yeah, well, I've already had Gabe, Luke, JC, a couple other guys. I kind of concentrated this week on my guys that were in their last window or having to make major decisions. I've always just kind of given facts and data and information and kind of let them, see how they feel, right? I know there's a lot of voices that go into it. I think it's really cool now. Everybody wants to talk about the timing and all that goes into it. Obviously, CFP got announced today, and I fully expect us to be in those conversations in the years ahead. But for where we were at, it kind of allowed us to take a deep breath this week. We lifted them twice. Met with them on Tuesday, had a victory dinner on Tuesday night, was absolutely awesome. We got this week until Wednesday, and then they kick into finals, and finals till that next Wednesday. We'll do some fun things, just a simple thing. We'll take these guys to eat at the ribeye, that's like a big deal to them. So all these little for us, all the way up until the 20th. Once school gets out, you kind of got to keep them occupied a little bit. So I'm already setting up practice around something where we can watch the CFP on the 19th and 20th, maybe something together. So yeah, just. I think to play these guys, but also for these seniors that got a decision to make, you just don't get these moments very much anymore. It was funny. We have a couple guest captains that came in this year, and a lot of guys that have played in the NFL, and they just always make reference to the friendships they make and bonded while they're here is more than any time when their college or their NFL career. And I really try to get those guys to understand and appreciate that.
Glenn, I'm sure you probably expected that this question was going to be coming, but SEC fans, if they watched last year's bowl game, Brett Bielema had a little bit of a reaction. He had a little bit of an altercation with Shane Beamer. Do you expect anything like that this time around? I mean, I don't think Josh Heupel's as outgoing as Shane Beamer is.
Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic because, man, we had the press conference, the day before or 2 days before, and they're both sitting there with a bucket of Cheez-Its in the middle, talking about how the great respect they have for each other, and then the next day or a couple days later, I thought they were going to rip each other's heads off. And so that was an interesting one for sure. I would be surprised if we got anything that eventful. I guess if Tennessee tries to pull up a trick play on the kickoff or something like that, maybe. But no, I don't think we'll have although maybe that was, what's the old saying, any PR is good PR. Maybe that was good. Both programs kind of, people were talking about Illinois and South Carolina at least on that day. So brought a little bit more attention. But we'll hope for maybe a little bit less controversy on the sidelines or on either sideline. I guess it was kind of expanded to both last year.
Yeah, these coaches have elephant brains, though. They remember everything. And you just listen to these guys all the time, so I won't be a bit surprised if there's a little something. Maybe that doesn't escalate to what we saw last year, but there's a little something here or there. Like maybe like if one of the signal calls in an audible from the quarterbacks, just like this. I mean, just something small like that would be hilarious.
I mean, hey, like I mentioned it earlier, but but Tennessee went after Luke Altmaier, Illinois' quarterback, pretty good in the portal. And so I don't think Bielema was going to storm the other sideline for it. But I won't be surprised if Illinois can pull out a win in this one, if post-game Bielema has something to say about, like, yeah, you could see why they wanted my quarterback so bad, but they couldn't have. Something like that. You know, you never a little jab one way or another. You never know. Maybe we'll see.
I'm kind of rooting to hear that. I know we're an SEC show, but, you know, I always like to.
Oh, me too.
I always love when the coaches, you know, stir up the drama and give us some good what are those? What are those?
Some quotables and whatever.
What's the thing that the youngins say nowadays? Tea, is that what it is?
Oh, the tea.
The tea.
Well, speaking of Tennessee playing in the state, or Illinois playing in the state of Tennessee, the football team also wants to follow the basketball team, who had some success there in Nashville, knocking off the Tennessee Volunteers. What do you make there of that game and being able to come on the road and knock off a ranked team, but then also to come into a hostile environment where, like we said earlier, it's a neutral site, but really in the hometown and in the home neck of the woods of the Vols?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with that you mentioned, because I actually will say, now to be fair, it's all orange, so it's like, it's hard to say what percentage of that was Tennessee and what percentage of that was Illinois. But I will say there were some Illinois fans there. I'm not going to say it was 50-50, but I don't think it was 90-10 either. So it actually felt like a neutral site game, which I was impressed. I think it helped. It was a Saturday. Champaign to Nashville is about 5 hours. I think a lot of people just made a little weekend out of it. Yeah. It was a night game, so really, if you had to work Friday, you could have got up early in the morning Saturday and drove down from Central Illinois. So it was, like I said, it wasn't 50-50, but it wasn't all Tennessee fans. That was a good win for Illinois, though, and that was a needed win for Illinois. Illinois is scheduled really hard in the non-conference, and it played Texas Tech, beat Texas Tech, but then lost to UConn and lost to Alabama, speaking of SEC. And so you're 1-2 in those tough non-cons going into that game. You really don't want to be 1-3. They have one more left. It's on Monday, like I mentioned. They play Mizzou. But I think they go into that Mizzou game 2-2 in these really tough non-conference games, probably expecting and hoping to get a win on Monday and then go into conference play. Say, we played five high major non-con games. We had a winning record in that. You can live with that. But Tennessee, I would say, is probably, I haven't kept up closely enough with what Texas Tech has done since that game. Tennessee's probably Illinois' best win yet. That was the Alabama game, they were close. It was very close, went down to the wire, and Illinois missed a bunch of free throws. But that was a prove-it game of like, okay, yeah, sure, we were close. Who cares? Let's go win one. And they got that one done. And then they smashed that guitar. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, we saw that. Yeah.
The poor guitar.
The poor guitar. Is the Big Ten back this year as a conference?
The SEC was so absolutely loaded last year. But I'll tell you this, man. Going into the season, obviously, Purdue was one, and now I think Michigan's not one, but Michigan probably could be one. Michigan looks ridiculously good, insanely good. And obviously Michigan State's going to be a factor every year. Look at what UCLA did over the offseason. I don't know how they've stacked up as far as what they've done, but I know that their roster lacks no talent. And so I think the Big Ten has a number of teams that could make a run, and I was on record, and this might be crazy because of how Michigan has how good they've looked, but I was saying that I think the regular season Big Ten champ could have 5-6 conference losses maybe, and now there's a Michigan fan out there somewhere who for some reason is listening to this SEC show and gonna DM me, we're not losing 5 games, what are you talking about? And you know what, he's probably right, but I just think it's really deep. I don't think there's gonna be many easy wins. Nebraska has kind of been like Vanderbilt, basically. Those two teams just came out of nowhere and have all of a sudden decided they don't want to lose, so Nebraska just beat Illinois in Champaign. Yeah. Nebraska just beat Illinois in Champaign, and Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, the list goes on. And so I think it'll be a really interesting league to follow. I don't know if I'll make an official stance on back or not back, but I think Michigan fans would probably be a little bit more bold in their take than me.
Well, Glenn, I'll tell you this, because if there is a Michigan fan that wants to, yell at you, I'll have him direct their attention at me because we are having Michigan on later this show.
That's true.
So, you know, there is probably going to be someone that's like, no, that's crazy. So I'll just have them direct all of that negative attention to me, and, you know, I can handle it that way. That way you don't have to deal with it, you know?
There we go. Yeah, you guys can take some calls from angry Michigan fans if you want. I don't know why they would be too angry right now, at least about basketball.
Blow everybody. I was going to say for the last 2 weeks, Patrick's been on the pulpit saying Michigan should be the number one team in the country. As of right now, it's hard to argue that situation.
Right.
So the Big Ten should be a lot of fun to watch. Glenn, this was awesome.
Yes.
Can't wait to have you back on, man. This was great. Thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
Absolutely.